All right, we are back with some more updates from Pro Play Games. Mr. George Machado back on the channel. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Awesome, fantastic. Can't wait. I'm really getting anxious to actually feel Chapter 2 cards in my hand finally and not seeing them on my screen every single day, teasing me.
It's really weird, right? Because it's like you get like one day where it's like a card, and then you get a day where it's like 20 cards. And then like the next day, and then like over the weekend, we got nothing. It's just like, I just want them now. Like, let me just play
Yeah,
with them.
please.
Like,
It's like another week, right?
it's like 10 days away, right? Like we're so close. It's just
So
like, oh,
close.
like just drop them in my app. Let me move on. Let's just figure it out. But yeah, I agree. It's fun. So, um, speaking of Rise of the Bloodborne, we got lots to talk about because you're hosting events just mere weeks after Rise is launched. But first and foremost, I wanted to kind of recap, not fully, but like I wanted to like discuss, Miami, right? Miami, we had 214 players, lots more than that registered that couldn't be there, but we had a gigantic size event. And from you, to hear like, giving you the platform to kind of tell everyone exactly how it went, how you feel about it. What do you think's going on? Like what did PPG learn from Miami?
Well, Miami was historic. It was one for the books. Obviously, like this leads the milestone for the largest Lorcana event organized to date. I mean, to the point where that capacity wasn't even covered in the floor guides for Ravensburger. So it was definitely a fun one. And a shout out to all the staff and the judges that kind of like helped put all that together. The commentators doing a fantastic job. You can find all the video rematches up on our YouTube channel because those are fantastic. Obviously, we had Dan, Gabby, and Fernando casting the hell out of that, and it was very, very fun to see and cast, and the storylines were there. It was great to see a champion all the way from Puerto Rico kind of come in and just take the crown from some of the best card game players from other card games ever.
Yeah.
Really, I mean,
Yeah.
you had YCS champions, you had GP grinders. It was great to see. And then the judge staff, that was there's no official judge, so how did we it was very professional crew of guys that just had the history from past card games. And once you judge one game, it's an easy transition for the most part for those that are in the competitive card game scene. So it was, they made it look easy, and shout out to them.
Yeah,
But
and just to intervene real quick, as like an outsider on the out, I didn't really hear too many judge calls. It might have been a nice, easy weekend for them. Like they did come up for sure, but I've been to other events where it feels like every 3.5 seconds someone's raising their hand calling for a judge. It felt like a pretty smooth room.
And that's definitely something to say about just Lorcana and its mechanics in general, how smooth they are and how easy they are to integrate, especially when you have a background. But even those that didn't have a background in trading card games, just to be able to read and execute without much insight from a third party. So it was great to see that for sure, because I think that means a lot for the longevity of the game and for the competitiveness of the game. Honestly, there's some games that thrive competitively that are just very intricate, but most of the time not having that extreme intricacy is just another I feel like barrier of entry that you don't need to have, and it's great that Lorcana doesn't have that. So,
and it can even attribute to the length of time of the event. Like it felt like the event ran pretty quickly. The rounds went off like really, like honestly really flawlessly. It felt like as like from the commentator side, I didn't have to fill much time in between the rounds that we didn't go to breaks, which I think we did that like maybe like every so often. Like we would take a break, I think every couple rounds, but realistically we had to fill those times. It wasn't difficult because we were able to get rounds going with like within 5 to 10 minutes of them ending, which is, I mean, that's spectacular.
the time management was great. We were able to slide in lunch break to make sure everybody was able to kind of like just refresh after the 3 grinding rounds and kind of just like get back in that right headspace, make sure that they were filled up, hydrated, ready to go. Having the concessions on stand was great. There were some factors outside of our control, like the room. Like it wasn't our room, so like there was a lot of things like the AC maybe not being where we wanted it to be that we just didn't have much control over. But with all those barriers, I think in general everybody just had a fantastic time. They loved everything about what was going on. And honestly, I'm just looking forward to more events like that. where we don't have an additional barrier of entry to kind of like come in and play. It was just kind of just open to the public, and having all the illustrators there was super cool too. So
yeah, it was kind of a luxury. So I guess going through that, a lot of the things that we were looking for on site were, player feedback. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to really discuss this. Like, what type of feedback is important for you to hear, coming out of these events? Now we've hosted a few of them. You have a couple coming up. Like, what are the things that you would like to hear from players so you can learn from that?
Well, the pricing obviously is something that we want to make sure we find our footing on, to make sure that it's something that's sustainable, and something competitive and worthwhile for people to come out there. Obviously, like putting up that amount of product consistently is not something that's like feasible. That's why we kind of look at each tour stop and we look at the barriers of entry, whether it requires a con badge, doesn't have a con badge, what city it's located in. The timing, is it around a set release? Is it 2 weeks in? Is it a month in? These are all things that we like to kind of custom make for the player experience, to kind of just, set expectations and make sure that these things are, as well advertised or as much, set up for as much success as possible. So that's definitely something that we'd like to, see if that pricing is like worth, after con badge or no con badge or whatever. Obviously different contracts are different with different venues and cons that we work with, but and then just I think the things like top cut, like it's not really said, like, do you want to see higher seed going first? Do you want to have that random? Those are things that are usually not covered,
right? Like without like a true comprehensive rules or tournament rules, like we're definitely just winging it, right?
For the most part. We like to use other games as kind of
right,
like as
setting a baseline. Precedent.
Yeah, but love to see what this community, because this community is a little bit unique. I mean, it does have a lot of cross pollination from other games, but a lot of them kind of come in with no real guideline or expectation. So what just makes sense for them in their head coming into this TCG space and playing a competitive tournament. And then side events too. Loving, like we saw certain side events do a lot better than others. Mm-hmm. So always trying to find our footing as to like what side events people want to see, in order to, like one that we would love to put on that a few people asked about was sealed.
Yeah.
That seems super fun, especially with the rules set for sealed. But once again, you have that product limitation where it's just like, how do you actually execute this?
Yeah.
Without it, with it just being sustainable, right? Like,
yeah, it would have to be like, especially like in like, you were running like 8-man pods for core constructed events, which is great. But I don't even think it's really unrealistic to do that for draft. Like it's just not, it's not feasible. So it's like, even if you could maybe say like, hey, I can do one of these, but like that's really difficult in itself, because product is just so hard and it's so scarce.
Yeah, so maybe finding like some multiplayer formats, some 8-player, 8-player on demand events that people really like to see, that we can continue running at like a cost efficient rate that's also like sustainable. Those are all things that I think as we kind of get a little bit more veteran with our community and the Lorcana community, that we can make sure that you're not just, when you go out to these events and you have this big time commitment and you're traveling and doing all the stuff, you want to be able to lay back and be like, oh, I didn't do so hot in the main event. It wasn't my day. I didn't have those matchups lined up for me. Let me go into a side event and maybe recoup some of those, those losses, potential losses or gains or whatever, because now you're playing for like additional value. And we had people winning gift sets, all weekend, which was really fun to see. So we had it set up in a way that people were able to continue to stay in the room, cheer their buddies on, cheer their teammates on, even if they didn't do so hot in the main event because they were out of the running and prizing. And then just kind of participate in those things. So, stuff like that.
Just an idea. How much were the entries for the winner gift sets?
I think there were like 10 or something like that.
I think they were like $10, right? So it's like, $10 play, have a chance to win a gift sets. Obviously, that's just what you had on hand, right? Like you didn't have troves, you didn't have like really extra packs or anything like that. So
we had a small little like pack ones that were like $5 or something like that, but they were like smaller pods, like 4-mans or something like that, and those were more like casual based formats, like the multiplayers, which a lot of people weren't like super down for like multiplayer. I mean, it does become like you're playing the Ursulas for sure. You're playing the You Have Forgotten Me's because they're just all really good cards. So like maybe that format's just not pushed enough. But I think in a world where they really push it and they give like some type of like exclusive, maybe deck building restriction, but also just like pricing for it.
I mean
that it can see success.
We know from past experiences that most multiplayer formats are created like by the community. So it's one of those where it's like we're still so young and there is rules for it, which is nice, but the chapter 1 stuff might just be not enough to really be creative with it. So I think over time maybe it grows. We'll have to see.
But yeah, stuff like that, just being able to have various things running alongside the main event for those who didn't do so hot is definitely something that I think has a lot of potential as we kind of like train our community to not just, be all main event. But
so definitely let us know in the comments, what prizes would you like to see inside events? We'll definitely be monitoring it. George and I have an open connection. It's things like that. I can share the information, and we're like, you're just looking to create better settings and honestly more reasons to play Lorcana after a certain point, right? Like we had 214 players show up in Miami, and after 3 rounds before lunch, a third of those players were technically eliminated from Top Cut. So what do you do with an extra 60 players? Like you have to have reasons for them to hang around and play and still have a way to kind of like indulge in the community. And I think it would be nice if we're able to figure out ways to like really help the community with these other type of events at the grander stages.
Yep. And talking about that, we had the highly successful 3v3 that we had on Sunday as well too. We had a good amount. I want to say like 20 something teams, and everybody kind of I think so. Yeah, like it's a format where everybody kind of like sticks to their own ink. So like if I'm Amethyst, nobody else in the team can play Amethyst, for example. So it works out really well, at least with the ink spread that we have currently, which is 6 inks. Each person takes 2, and there's no crossover or overlap.
And to your credit, there was a lot of single players that came up and said, hey, listen, like I want to play in the event, but I need help. Like I need friends. And then more people would come in and they'd be like, oh, there's 2 of us. We need an extra. There was like, I was sitting there on Sunday morning during my break from commentating, watching you literally put teams together. So just because you don't have a team doesn't mean you wouldn't be able to participate. There was plenty of players that came up and were still able to play in that event.
Yeah, and people had like multiple decks on them, or they just built, the deck from one day to the next because there was so many vendors there, including ourselves, that we just had like a plethora of every single that you were kind of just able to like craft and make whatever you wanted to play. Or if you played against something like funky or creative in the main event, you're able to switch your deck and kind of like play in the side event with whatever else you wanted to play with. So yeah, that was really fun to see. And I think that overall the side events had a huge success alongside the main event to kind of just like create this perfect storm of everybody just having fun, whether they ran deep in the main event or if they just fell short in the main event and still had other things to kind of enjoy with the Lorcana trading card game.
Yeah. Any final words on Miami?
No, I mean I'm looking forward to put on something more historic or larger than that. Of course, we always want to set milestones for ourselves and break records and such. So we're hoping for that other perfect storm of factors to kind of line up together in in either one of our announced upcoming events or one of our unannounced upcoming events. Obviously there's a lot of different things that kind of come into putting in like a spectacular show like that, but we were blessed enough to kind of get the support of everybody to kind of come together for that event, and we're looking to do that again in the future.
Well, starting out on the the next track here in the Lorcana OP Tour, we have the Greater Columbus Convention Center in Columbus, Ohio. This is a Saturday and Sunday Top Cut 2K cash, December 2nd and 3rd at Galaxy Con. So this was announced a couple months ago. It was announced that we were doing this, but we announced the prizes on commentary at Miami. What is, aside from the obvious elephant in the room that is Rise of the Floodborn will release and it will be legal for this tournament, what else is there to be excited about for coming and participating in GalaxyCon's PPG tour?
Well, I think it's going to be great because obviously we're going to have some semblance of product, whether it just be in singles form or in singles and products, or even products in the side event for Floodborne. As of today, recording, we don't have actual numbers for what we expect for Chapter 2. But our goal and prerogative since day one for Lorcana has really just been to just hold on to that product and make sure that we use it to feed the players of the competitive, in the organized play fashion. So we don't have anything that's super solid that we can commit to right now, but the idea is to, at bare minimum, have those singles kind of like we did at NDK Denver, to make sure that players can come in there, finish their deck, or
You had
make a deck
I
from
mean, you had
scratch.
plenty of singles at Miami as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but NDK was a little bit more
Right.
because it was like
2
a
weeks.
week after
Yeah, it
official,
was
or
like
no, it was official release week. So it
yeah,
was like
which is
people
the
showed
same
up
thing.
there, yeah,
This is
with
the
their
same thing for
2 week,
chapter 2.
yeah,
Yeah.
with their two. Oh, really? Okay, cool. So
Yeah.
that's
It's the
funny how that
exact same
lines up.
thing.
Yeah, so
Literally the same thing.
people will definitely then be appreciative of like what we have there for, to make sure that they can fine tune their deck and be able to compete with the final version or the perfected version of their deck, whatever they end up grinding on Pixelborn, whatever the meta ends up being in Pixelborn, kind of like usually transitions in one shape or form, depending on like what people's card pool kind of look like when that day comes out. But yeah, so obviously we wanted to make sure that we, at least for Galaxy Con and for Hallmat, because they were both set 2 metas and both require set 2 product, we wanted to make sure that they were both consistent in prize support. So we kind of just went with the cash prerogative. A lot of cash tournaments you see, they're usually like 1Ks. There's not many 2Ks out there. So we figured, let's double the average and make it a 2K. So hopefully that's competitive enough to see a lot of. I've already heard of people flying in from Puerto Rico, other places of the world, to kind of come out and compete, because the tournament experience is going to be great. Obviously it's going to be live streamed, and we want to make sure that we put on the most competitive tournament as possible, and then provide extra value in any way, shape, or form we can at the event, whether it be providing singles that you normally wouldn't have at your local game store, providing product that you wouldn't normally find anywhere, or just being able to play for these prizes where you're just like, everybody, like when you play for prizes, it's like everybody's chipping in, but you're getting the product for near nothing. So it's really cool to be able to win a gift set for $10. It's really cool to win a pack for $5 or whatever. Right. So we're gonna see how the attendance for these go. These, unfortunately, part of the contract, we weren't able to remove the con badge for these 2 specific events, but it's something that once we see attendance numbers compared to without con badge versus con badge, this is something that we can use in negotiations in 2024 events, right, to kind of find that perfect threshold. And obviously, like, there is this price sensitivity that exists out there, and we want to make sure that we feel that out to really attend to the majority of players. And obviously we want each one of these to be 200 plus, so we're going to do everything that we can to kind of set those up for success. So
right, and it is with that to say, it's having more than one reason to go to the event is nice, but you're also, as we were talking about Miami, we're trying to set up a scenario that, okay, you're not all in on the main event either. So if we can get the right numbers for the side events, then it's like you're still there to play Lorcana the whole day. You don't have to, you don't have to do stuff you don't want to do. So if you want to go and play Lorcana, the goal would definitely be to set up ways for people to continue to play Lorcana all day long. And you definitely, you have the judge staff to run multiple events at the same time. It was not difficult at all. So you have the staff for all those things, so people don't need to be worried about those. And you had the vendors going all day. Like the staff was large. It was a big setting for anyone that wasn't in Miami and doesn't really understand. It was a very large amount of player. Like there was a large commitment of a community here to make this thing work and work so very well. So that's the whole point, is like getting into a scenario of Columbus of, yes, you have to buy a badge this time. It's a little more expensive. It's Ohio. I'm not making fun of Ohio, I swear. I am a little bit. But, how dare you? How dare I? But the point is that finding other things to do at this event, if it just means playing more Lorcana, then George and PPG are trying to
Oh,
definitely
for sure.
set that up. They want
Of course.
people to stay in the area, play the game, and
Of
enjoy it
course.
and be the game, right?
Yeah, and if you don't, these two upcoming conventions are like
Unique.
5+ or 10+ years, and like they're veteran conventions. So there is going to be a lot, and they really pride themselves. Probably you can tell from the con badge that they pride themselves in making sure that entertainment and attractions are of no shortage of these events, and we're only but a speck on their radar, honestly, because of the other titles and partners that they kind of bring in. So if you're any type of, if you're familiar with the con scene whatsoever, I would be I wouldn't be surprised to see what they put on as far as additional attraction and additional things. If you just wanted to go there, play a little Lorcana, decompress, but also enjoy the con, obviously you'll have that option to explore it to its fullest.
So talk to me about the Marriott World Center, Orlando, Florida, December 21st and 22nd. The day one is Swiss is Thursday, and the day two Top Cut is Friday at the Holiday Matsuri convention. P.S. I got to give a shout out. Pedro is the graphics guy. I love the Christmas on the PPG logo.
Yeah.
Shout out to Pedro.
Very good. Yeah, it's very unique. I love the little like touches that we're able to kind of like spin off creatively.
Yes.
To make these all encompassing. So obviously, as you can tell, this is right before Christmas, guys. So like if you have that luxury of being able to get that extended vacation, this is something that's gonna like flow really well for you because you're in Orlando. You're not too far from Disney World. And then you have that whole weekend and following days off typically because it is a holiday time. So if you need an excuse to use that PTO, I think this is it because it's going to make for a really fantastic weekend. This is one of the unique cons that we typically don't exactly go full on if they're like weekday cons, but this one kind of lined up not only scheduling wise, but it kind of gave people time to get their set too. It was in Orlando, which is if anybody's part of Florida, I mean, like they breed card game players here.
We just had 214 people come to an event in Miami. I mean, Orlando and Christmas time doesn't sound like the worst plan ever. So
yeah, it's but a 4-hour drive if you're from Miami, so they're not too far apart. And just Orlando typically always gives us higher numbers than Miami, anyways. When you're talking about like consistent, experience. But we know that this one might be a stretch, but we're willing to give it a go. We got the support of Holiday Matsuri. And we wanted to just, put on something before end of year that said, hey, we put on 3 events before end of year since the drop of Lorcana. Let's attack 2024. And hopefully we have more information by that event. That's when we want to be able to give people more information about our 2024 dates. And by that time, we'll have that information of like, are we sticking with these at cons? Are we moving away from the con experience? How are we exactly going to attack this? Are we going to go with product and maybe finding outside ways to secure this product to make sure that, we're able to provide a constant product experience, or are we just going to be able to throw money or additional money or whatever to these events and make them worthwhile? So that one's going to be an exciting climax to the season. And then, hopefully we have chapter 3 by then, information. So that way we know, is chapter 3 coming out, in February or March, or when is it?
Late February, early March sounds about right. Happy birthday to me. So yeah.
So yeah, that one's going to be exciting. That one, like I said, also huge party con too for those party goers. I'm too old for that, but I'm sure some of you young
I'm with you.
Probably get into that. But yeah, we'll see. I'm super excited for it, and we're gonna be live streaming both of those like normal, and really excited to see who we crown our set 2 champion. Honestly,
fair. All right. So speaking of 2024, Disney Lorcana and Ravensburger, they unofficially announced that they are going to be making an announcement. I just said so many things at once, but hopefully you guys got it. there's an announcement coming in Q1 about potential Q2 official competitive play. So my question to you is, how does that affect PPG, and does it even affect you?
I mean, that's great. First of all, we want to see, because all the games that we carry unofficially, we also carry officially as we get the opportunities to do so, obviously. And certain companies work with, certain partners and such. And whenever the official company starts to normalize or standardize these organized play tours, destinations, competitive events, it always means it's always positive for us, right? Because that's what we want to be able to open the eyes of these maybe like newer companies that are new to the landscape, to be like, hey, this is actually important, or if this wasn't a priority, it should be a priority, and let me show you why. And that's all we kind of like hope to do every time that we put on these events, because as we know, organized play, and we've worked with organized play departments from several different manufacturers, they're very small at times, and they don't have that capacity to put on these things, and sometimes they just don't have that background to know how much planning and how many things you need to do to make sure that this comes together and is kosher, right? Because a lot of this stuff can go south really fast if you don't know what you're doing, and you're not very entwined into the industry and how these things have to go, and the insurances and all that stuff that you have to go through. So I think in general it's very positive for us and what we're doing. There is going to be some casualties, like the Galaxy Con and PAX kind of clash on dates, and that's going to happen. But I think Ravensburger kind of finding their footing, and they'll be able to kind of like make these kind of plans a little bit more farther in advance, so that they can also get a larger attendance of players, and kind of make sure that players can kind of like request that PTO and time off, and make those proper travel accommodations to make sure that those events are set up for success. So I think in general, overall, very positive. I welcome them, taking the initiative and actually wanting to do this, as opposed to taking the extra time to stay radio silent and all the matter. So, and we can only hope that that's, we're somebody that they can rely on to either help or reference when putting on successful events of their own.
Fair. So what can we expect from Pro Play Games in 2024?
Well, there's a lot of exciting stuff that I can't really talk about on the matter yet, but I want to say that there's going to be full commitment of PPG in 2024
a couple questions
to Lorcana.
I'll try and make it easy. You can just give me side answers. Biggest common question is, do you guys do the West Coast?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we did Denver, right?
Denver this year.
Is that West Coast, right? That's like West Coast, right?
Yeah, it's West Coast-ish.
I think so. But yeah, we do West Coast. It's much rarer for sure.
Yeah.
And we have to find like a really good, I guess, like combination of factors to be able to execute a West Coast location versus something like an East Coast location.
Right.
It's not impossible, and we're definitely, I want to say, like 1 out of 5 will go to the West Coast, but we would have to do some really intense surveying to make sure that that's something that usually, I think the first ever survey that we put on, the majority of those destinations were East Coast, and it's usually consistent like that for card games for us. And I don't know, maybe because we are an East Coast company, I don't know exactly why, but like we have our following, and we've had a following, and the problem is most of our following probably shares that same sentiment, because a lot of these guys go from card game to card game to card game. So when they see things like that, even if it doesn't apply to them, they'll go and be like, East Coast. We just want to see you, right?
I think I remember in the past you've done in Vegas before.
Yes, Vegas.
So the point is that, let's just say you guys do 30 events in a year, like maybe 3 or 4 of them, if we're lucky, are in the West Coast. And granted, those events might not line up to be a Lorcana either, for what it's worth. But it is to say that like you're not ruling out West Coast at all. It's just a matter
Correct.
of what comes.
Yeah, if the cards line up and the opportunities kind of line up, then there's never a situation where we're like no because of the destination. If that makes any sense. Location for us is never like a make or break. It's just like, do we have that opportunity? Does it line up? I am gonna say that West Coast ones do make the travel a little bit more complicated because we're losing days and hours and whatever from the
For
travel.
you personally, like for
but
the
it's not.
for the team.
Yeah, but it's not. It's never a make or break.
Right. So you keep saying like, champion of Denver, champion of Miami, champion of of the next couple. Is there anything that like in other games you've ever kind of associated with champions for? Like, is there some champions event, like anything like that? You might have like a just like a maybe for in 2024.
I mean, we have in the past known for putting on like invitationals where like champions, you get like round buys and or leaderboards that people, if they're like top X on the leaderboard, it's something that we're looking at potentially experimenting with in 2024 as well too. But like I said, there's a few different things that we want to make sure that we mature to make sure that we can actually transition into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something that we've done for games in the past before. It's pretty common, albeit much more established games that have like mature organized play communities, which we want to grow this into. But for now, it's so very new. Many people didn't even know what Swiss was or like what like it was just okay, so let's get everybody trained up with like competitive events. Hopefully, Lorcana's initiative also trains up a lot of these players that may not be familiar with the terminology or how competitive events work, and that will kind of transition itself to a point where I feel like we'd love to put on something like that, for Lorcana. So.
That's fair. 2 questions, one for me, one from the Discord. The one from the Discord is your judge program. How do players get involved in that?
Yeah, so if you go to ppgeventmanagement.com, we have a little judge application tab that shows you all our upcoming stops, and you can even toggle the game. So like if we're going to be in December for Battle Spirits or for Lorcana or whatever, you go and you toggle the event that you want to judge for, the game, you put in your experience, you put in all that stuff. So see it as like a Google form resume kind of that helps us select or helps us know what event you're interested in judging. This could be various ones or it could just be one, and then once you put in your application on there, we'll usually reach back out if we need if we want to further vet you or if we want to just onboard you straight from the get-go. So that's your best way in getting involved in the whole judge program. Obviously all these judge programs are mostly unofficial. Some of them require official judges, like the Bandai ones that we do official organized play for. If there's a world where Lorcana contracts us to do stuff and they have an official judge test, until you fill that out, we won't be able to staff you. But like that's how it typically works. But for right now, there's nothing. So we usually use your past experience and make sure that you've taken at least the community judge exam and you have some plethora of knowledge about Lorcana itself if you were interested in a Lorcana judging position.
Okay. Second question for me. In a world where we do get organized play through Disney Lorcana and Ravensburger, how excited is the player George Machado, to play at that level?
Super. I'm 100% playing. I mean, as long as we're not associated in any way. Obviously, we would love to. Myself and a lot of grinders from PPG, we're going out full force. All of us, we're squatted up. We're trying to win. All the events for sure. We have some guys that eat, breathe, and sleep card games, and they'll definitely be showing out in full force. So,
nice.
We'll be supporting in any way, which way that we can.
All right. Well, with that, any final details on anything to close out the year?
We just want to thank everybody who's kind of experienced the whole PPG experience and everybody that's worked alongside us to kind of make those things successful. And we want to continue to, provide the most excellent and best player experience possible. So if you ever have, positive, negative feedback or whatever, just make sure that you comment down below, let us know, shoot me a message, shoot Dan a message. I mean, we're always looking to do the best that we can, and we want to make sure that this game is set up for success. So I think, I'm just excited to see what's set 2 and, 2024 have in store for us. So.
Agreed. Again, hit us up in the comments. Let us know any type of feedback from PPG Events, what kind of prizes we're looking for side events, anything we talked about. If you have any questions at all about any of it, hit me up in the comments, wherever you know where to find us. And I'll have all the links for everything in the description as well. Thank you so much for joining me, Machado. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.